Hey, this is Sam Black with a vintage cube draft, and I've opened a piece of power, Mox Sapphire in this case, and I will almost always take any power that I open, so it's probably going to be the pick here. The other noteworthy cards in the pack to me are Emrakul, Gaia's Cradle, potentially Llanowar Elves. None of these are anywhere near Mox Sapphire, so this is a pretty easy pick. I would be happy to table True Name Nemesis, though I don't think that'll happen. It's pretty hard to predict what from this pack I might get back and want, and I also don't think I'm sending any strong enough signals that I should really pay any attention to what I'm passing here, so just take the Sapphire and stay relatively open. Cards that stand out here are possibly Sylvan Caryatid, but honestly I think that it's best to just take Ponder in this spot. None of the cards in this pack are amazing, and while all of the Moxes are pretty good in any deck, they're substantially better when you actually use their color of mana, so I do take this as a reasonable incentive to draft blue, and I think Ponder is a pretty good card in any blue deck. There are some where it stands out more than others, but without any really strong cards here to make me want to solidify in something else, I think it's best to just stay open in blue and have better access to the powerful cards that I end up finding later by taking the Ponder. Anticipate, I think, is just a little bit worse than Ponder. The being an instant and the slightly better effect isn't really worth the extra mana. Here, the options that stand out are Thirst for Knowledge and Sword of Body and Mind. Ugin and Wandering Fumarole, I think, are just a level below that. Sword of Body and Mind is one of the two best swords. Really, I think that the three that don't give protection from white, so Sword of Body and Mind, Sword of Fire and Ice, and Sword of Feast and Famine, are better than the other two. Body and Mind tends to end games very quickly. It requires playing creatures, but I don't really mind playing creatures in this cube. Thirst for Knowledge is actually a more open card with what I have, but I think that the top end of draw cards is less good than the top end of basically win the game with the sword. I think that if I had slightly different preferences, I would take the Thirst, but since I do prefer to be a reasonably fair creature-y deck, I'm willing to take the sword and commit a little bit more there. Here, nothing really stands out. Tarmogoyf is pretty good in blue-green, where you're likely to put things in the graveyard early. I think the option is mostly between Tarmogoyf and Temple of Deceit. I actually like Temples a lot, and I think other things... The other cards that I like are the gold cards. I kind of like all of them, but they're all pretty big departures from blue card artifact. I think I'm just going to take the Temple of Deceit. I think that a wider range of decks are going to appreciate it than Tarmogoyf. I'm going to take Stoneforge Mystic here. Sword of Fire and Ice, or Sword of Feast and Famine is good with Sword of Body and Mind in that they both want the same kinds of other cards, but Stoneforge Mystic, when I already have a good piece of equipment to get with it, I think is one of the best creatures, actually. Repeal would be the card that I would take if I had taken Thirst for Knowledge instead of Sword of Body and Mind. I still would have taken Temple of Deceit next. And then for me, this pick would probably be between repeal Emrakul and Sword of Feast and Famine, and I would probably take repeal, but with a sword, I'm going to go for the Stoneforge Mystic. So now I'm looking to be blue-white, optionally splashing black or other colors. I don't like Enlightened Tutor that much. Recruiter of the Guard is interesting. It doesn't strike me as a very powerful card, but it is another creature that can hold a sword, and it can get Stoneforge Mystic to get sword. That's kind of very slow and grindy, but it does effectively do a thing. Arbor Elf plays really well with swords, actually. I'm going to take the Arbor Elf. I often end up Bant in my sword decks, and I think that I have a spot where it makes sense to move in that direction. Temple of Deceit stock is dropping rapidly. I'm not that into Armageddon or Winter Orb in this cube. I think that too many people aren't really that dependent on their lands. Recurring Nightmare is powerful with creatures in general, but it's moving into yet another color. I think this pick is actually between Smuggler's Copter and Spellskite. And I think Smuggler's Copter is very slightly more powerful when I know that I'm trying to draft other small creatures to use the equipment that I'm finding with Stoneforge Mystic. Spellskite does have some favorable interactions there. It can hold equipment, and it protects equipment. It protects another creature that you're equipping. But I think that the upside with Smuggler's Copter and small creatures is even bigger. This pack has a lot of solid cards. Basically everything but Abyss is a card that I could end up playing in this deck depending on where it goes. But if I'm looking to be 3 colors early, I'm going to prioritize fixing pretty heavily, so I think Temple of Deceit is the right way to go here. Turns out Mother of Runes is the card that I want from the pack that I opened that tabled. It's going to play very well in a Bant small creatures and equipment strategy. Arbor Elf is a card that generally plays pretty well with Mirror Battlesphere, but I'm more committed to playing a small creature game than playing a ramp game at this point, so I'm going to go with the Mother. I'm going to move Temple of Deceit to my sideboard for now. These cards aren't great. I'm probably going to have too many creatures for Thing in the Ice. I'm just going to take a Myria. Well, I could take Thrun. Thrun is probably better than a Myria Angel. It requires less to go right to want it in general, and the Myria Angel is good with equipment, but I only really like it if I have fetch lands, and Thrun is going to have some very good matchups at worst. Here I'm going to take Stirring Wildwood, although I like Banishing Light quite a bit. This is just, like I said, if I'm going to draft 3 colors, which I'm pretty solidly looking to do, I'm going to want to prioritize fixing, and blue is the color that I might drop, and then I still have Stirring Wildwood in my green-white deck. The more I move into a creature deck, the less I like Tarmogoyf, actually, because it's harder to have a variety of types, although cards like Smuggler's Copter help it a lot. And obviously I'm not going to take a red or black card in my Bant deck here. Similarly, pretty easy Garruk there, and I think I actually like Enlightened Tutor over Bring Delight. I don't love either one of them. Excuse me. This is probably between Garruk, Force of Will, Regrowth. You can see a case for Days. Voice Resurgence is a card I would hope to table. I like Force of Will the most in terms of what it does for my deck, but Ponder is my only blue card, and there aren't really that many blue cards that I'm going to prioritize taking at this point, so it's likely that I won't actually be good at casting Force of Will. So I think I'm actually just going to take Garruk here. It plays pretty well with what I'm doing, especially, and it's like all Planeswalkers, much better to cast early. I have Arbor Elf and Sapphire to do that, and I'm looking for mana creatures in general because they play well with Sword. Unexpectedly Absent, incidentally, is a card that my opinion has lowered on somewhat since I first saw it, although I do still think it's good. Here, I'm not looking to do channel level unfair things. Trigon Predator and Flicker Wisp play reasonably with what I'm doing, but I think it's going to be hard on my mana, but I really love Counterspell in this cube, so I'm going to take it here. It's going over just kind of generically good creatures, so I think it's safe to take at this spot. This pack is really interesting. Tundra, Sword of Fire and Ice, and Elesh Norn are all extremely tempting. The Counterspell makes me really want to take the Tundra here. Having Tundra puts me much better off in terms of fixing my mana than having no dual lands, because of what it does for enabling fetch lands to improve my mana. And Elesh Norn is fantastic in a mana creatures deck specifically. And then Sword of Fire and Ice plays really well with the cards I'm trying to play, makes sure that my Stoneforge Mystic will have something to find, and gives it options. Any of those three would be really a very reasonable pick. I'm going to go with the Sword and just hope to draft a deck where swords play really well. Here, any of Balance, Brimaz, and Simic Signet stand out. I don't think it's correct to take Brimaz here. It's a heavy white requirement when I could be a blue-green deck that's just splashing a little bit of white. Reclamation Sage is also really good. Balance, oddly enough, sometimes tables. I think I want Simic Signet to make my mana work and cast these Planeswalkers earlier, and having extra artifact mana and artifacts in general makes Balance a lot better if I somehow table it. This pack actually has a lot of... This is a really deep pack for me. Green Sun Zenith is good, Reclamation Sage is good, Hedron Archive is good, Ancestral Vision is potentially good, Vidalcan Shackles even, depending on how my deck goes, so I might get something good out of that pack. Trinket Mage finds Mox Sapphire. There aren't that many good one-mana artifacts in this cube. There are a few. I would certainly want something like a Skull Clamp, but it's likely that it'll only find Sapphire. Dig Through Time is a really powerful card, but I don't think I'm putting enough things in the graveyard for it. Managorger Hydra and Scavenging Ooze are both kind of normal good creatures. This is roughly the level of filler creature in this cube to me. They're not bad creatures, they're just about the average that I'd be looking for to round out a creature deck. But I'm going to take Celestial Colonnade because it has not stopped being true that I want to make sure I have good mana. To that end, I'm tempted to take Verdant Catacombs to try to find a dual land that I can find with it later, but I think it's better to take Kitchen Finks. The hybrid mana in this deck is going to make it pretty easy to cast, and it's a reliable creature to hold swords, and it has some really good matchups, obviously, against anyone who's trying to attack you, or Mono Red specifically. It's one of the best things you can have. Oracle and Declaration Stone are interesting, but I'd take Verdant Catacombs before them. I don't care very much about having a third sword now that I have two, especially since that one's weaker. So this to me is between Mirran Crusader and Mystic Snake. I don't like Mana Confluence very much, although it might actually be really good in this deck. Mirran Crusader is a fantastic sideboard card, plays super well with swords, but I really always love counterspells in this cube. I'm going to take the Mystic Snake. So many people draft unfair decks where counterspells are so important. Wow. Dragonlord Dromoka is very good at what it does. Karakas only interacts on my side with Thrun, but it is a card that just randomly gets people. But I think I want Edric. It's much better if I have more mana creatures, but I am looking to have more mana creatures and still optimistic that I'll end up with them. So I'm going to take that here. I'm going to take Voice of Resurgence over Daze. This is just another reliable creature to be able to equip, and it has some particularly good matchups, and its floor is pretty high. It's never going to be bad. Dragon Predator, Flicker Wisp, and Master of the Wild Hunt are all still here. They're all pretty interesting. I'm going to take Dragon Predator because it's easier to cast than Flicker Wisp and comes down faster than Master of the Wild Hunt. It's good with swords, which is what I'm looking for. I'm going to take Thada Adel over Eureka and Mindslaver. I'm not doing big stuff, and evasion creatures are obviously a high priority with the swords, so worst case I can board this in against blue, which is probably what I'll do with it. I'm not expecting to have enough islands to really want Shackles, and Reclamation Sage is quietly a really strong card. Happy to pick that up here. Easy Scavenging Ooze, sideboard Linvala, sideboard CDC. So my deck is pretty open. I definitely have enough cards at this point that are all on plan. And now I'm really just looking to... I'm basically looking for 1 mana creatures that tap for mana as a top priority. Well, power and unfair cards, then 1 mana creatures that tap for mana, then mana fixing. I feel like my deck is kind of well-rounded in terms of its curve and having the stuff that I need outside of that, and I'm just looking to improve those things. So, didn't get any of that, so we're looking at Riftwing Cloudskate, Lightning Greaves, Torrential Gearhulk, and Freyalise. Maybe Oath of Nissa, or Hangerback. Lightning Greaves is a card that I'm always skeptical of. I'm the right kind of deck for it, but I don't think it's the pick here. I think I actually just want Freyalise. I don't know that it's between that and Cloudskate to me, I think. This is kind of too expensive, and Lightning Greaves is just not a card I like all that much. Hero of Bladehold would also be reasonable, but I'm currently skewed away from white mana, and I want to expect that to continue. Maybe I should just Cloudskate, though. Yeah, I'm just going to Cloudskate. Here, I'm going to take Finhorn Elves over Temple of Enlightenment. I think it's more important to me to have accelerators at this point than to have better white mana. I could even just not play white, and I'd be willing to drop having the white cards to have Finhorn Elf, even though Stoneforge is very good. Ooh. Definitely taking fixing here. But Mox Diamond is actually really good with what I'm doing. I have cards to recoup the card disadvantage in Edric and Planeswalkers, I guess. And getting these things down a turn early, getting an earlier hit with a sword is really big game. I think Mox is actually better than lands. Also, if I pass all of lands, it's kind of more likely that I table one of them. If that doesn't happen, I hope I at least get a Thragtusk out of this. But yeah, I think Mox is better than lands here. I don't really like Pestermite just as a value play. I'm obviously not anywhere near comboing with it. So this to me is between Oblivion Ring and Solemn Simulacrum. I think this is an easy spot to pick up removal, and I think it's good to have a little. Ooh, wow, this is kind of a lot of great stuff all over the place. I'm not going to take Control Magic. This is between Opposition, Skull Clamp, and Swords. I think not Temple. Skull Clamp is obviously a very different kind of thing that I can get with Stoneforge and super powerful. Temple is fixing in a spot where I've said that I prioritize that a lot. Swords is fantastic removal in a deck that doesn't have a lot of fantastic removal or removal at all, and would really appreciate it, but it's white, and I could conceivably still not play white, although I could splash Swords. I have Mox Diamond in addition to these two lands. Yeah, I'm going to take the Swords here. Feels really weird to take it over Opposition, Skull Clamp, and Temple of Plenty, but I also don't really have creatures that make a lot of creatures outside of Garruk. That pick easily could have been wrong. It's very possible that I should have taken Opposition or a Skull Clamp. Those cards are all great. This is between... I guess once I identify that this is probably between Ojutai and Wolfir Silverheart, I think Ojutai is a little bit better. It plays a little better with the weapons because it can be a hex-proof creature. I'm going to go with Ojutai. I'm going to take Cryptic Command, even though it might not be easy to cast, because it's just so good. I think this is a Reflector Mage. A little weird to take it over Path after talking up Swords, but Swords is a lot better than Path, and Reflector Mage is very good in my deck. Kind of wonder if every time I passed a land it was for something really good, but I kind of wonder if my deck was just deep enough on cards that I should have just taken the lands. I don't think I want the Gear Hulk. I have a decent number of OK instants, Counterspell, Cryptic, Swords, but I could even take Lodestone Golem here. Seems kind of weird, but it's actually roughly what I'm looking to do. And there are some decks it's incredible against. Oath of Nissa would be really reasonable. It makes it a lot easier to cast something like Garruk, and I have plenty of hits for it, but it's kind of another ponder. But I'm interested in Lodestone Golem. At worst, it's very good in certain matchups. This is surprising, but I think I want Porcelain Legionnaire here. Duplicant and Kythian are interesting. Porcelain Legionnaire is much easier to cast than Kythian, and First Strike with Swords sometimes kind of big game. I don't think I want Gifts Ungiven, so I guess I'll take Soldier of the Pantheon, but I don't know if I'm going to end up using it. These are blank, so I'll sideboard Exalted Angel. Timely is a really good sideboard card in my deck. Got the Silverheart too. Don't think I'm going to use that. I don't have enough artifacts for Workshop. A lot of options with this deck because I have so many playables and my mana didn't really come together great, so cutting colors is very much on the table. Let's see. I don't think Thrun is a card that I'm looking to main deck. Simic Signet and Mox Diamond help my mana a lot. I don't think I want Garruk Primal Hunter. I think I want the immediate impact with the creature 5s. Don't think I want Silverheart either. I think I like lowering my curve, even though I do have some extra mana sources, because these swords are kind of secretly 5-drops. Because I want to play them and equip them the same turn, ideally. They don't want to move. So, whatever. I just know they're 5-drops. I don't think I want Scavenging Ooze or Tarmogoyf. They are not great early. And I'm kind of looking for my creatures to just be good on the board when I cast them. I don't think I want Soldier of the Pantheon. I want my ones to be utility creatures. I don't really care about raw numbers. I like how my curve's looking. Kinda wish I had one less 3-drop, sort of, but I like all the cards, so I don't think I'm gonna cut one of them. I think I might just cut Garruk. I can board that in when I want it as a removal spell. I don't want to be 14 land with 2 Moxes. I definitely want to cut at least one more card. I almost wonder if it should just be Oblivion Ring. I have Reflector Mage, Reclamation Sage, Swords, Cloudskate as answers. Can board that in where I need that kind of effect. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. Also gets rid of a white card, makes my mana a little bit easier. Could also cut Ojutai for similar reasons. Could cut Reflector Mage for Thada. Could definitely get this white down if I wanted. There are definitely spots where I should consider siding out white, but I think I can make it work main, although it will reevaluate as I go over my mana. Thinking about whether I want to cut another spell. Worried about too many mana sources, but I get better mana if I play more lands, obviously. And since Stirring Wildwood and Celestial Colonnade are 2 of my lands, it gives me a bit of flood insurance. I also have Smuggler's Copter. Mox Diamond is so tricky because it's a mana source, but it needs you to have a land. Let's see if I can make the mana work as is, and if I can't, I can consider adding a land to fix it. So, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards that need white mana, and then incidentally also Porcelain Legionnaire. I'll probably want at least 6 ways to get white mana. I have 1, 2, 3 to begin with, so I would like it if I could afford 3 planes. And then the question is just whether I can make my green and blue sources work in that framework. So I kind of would like, in a dream world I would like 9 of each, but I'm going to set a hard minimum at 8 sources of each. So green, I have 1, 2, 3, we're not counting these things. We'll count Simic Signet as 4, so I need at least 3 forests, and I'd really like a 4th. And then for blue, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I need at least 3 islands, and I would like a 4th. So that's 9 lands that I definitely want, and I get 12, so I could have 1 more of everything. That's nice. So now I'm 997. That's kind of exactly where I was hoping I would end up. Though, that looks like a lot of planes for this kind of deck. I want to consider cutting a planes for probably an island to make Cryptic Command work better. Yeah, I'm gonna cut up plains for island. Alright, that will be my deck.